Hello, fans, collectors, investors. Welcome back to Iconic Baseball. I'm Iconic Al, and I'm elated to bring you number 16 on the countdown today. This is my list of the 100 greatest and most iconic ball players in baseball history. I've been presenting this list from the bottom up for the past 2 years or so, and it is my great pleasure to bring you the most polarizing figure in baseball history. Also happens to be objectively one of the greatest players of all time. Like the other PED-linked players, their numbers can't be taken at face value, although they cannot be dismissed completely. As I did with Roger Clemens a few months back, we'll go deep into the stats, into the advanced modeling, and find out just where this player belongs in the pantheon of baseball greats. You know who I'm talking about, of course, the great Barry Lamar Bonds.
Take me out to the ball game. Take me out with the crowd. Buy me some peanuts and cracker jack. I don't care if I never get back. Let me root for the home team. If they don't win, it's a shame. For it's 1, 2, 3 strikes, you're out at the old ball game.
Barry Bonds was a remarkable talent, and I consider myself lucky to have had a front row seat coming of age in Pittsburgh in the early 90s as a baseball fan, getting to watch Barry Bonds and his five-tool talent. This is a guy who won 8 Gold Glove awards and stole 514 bases, in addition to all the power numbers that we've come to know for Barry Bonds. It's very easy to forget the kind of player that he used to be. He carries special meaning to my family because my dad player collected Barry Bonds. In fact, I would call my dad a super collector of Barry Bonds, who amassed 9,500 unique pieces at the peak of his collection. My dad has since retired and started to move along his collection over the last few years. But over the next few minutes here, as I share some stats and some analysis on Barry Bonds, I'll be displaying some of the cards from my dad's collection from my last trip home to Pittsburgh. And you'll get a sense of some of the monstrous cards that my dad had and still has, some of which are for sale currently, and some of which have already been sold. But please enjoy the eye candy as I go into some of these stats. Now, when analyzing Barry Bonds, I think it's helpful to look at 3 alternate statistical realities. Reality number 1 are the numbers you see on the page. A 162.7 WAR. He hit .298 for a career with a ludicrous .444 career on base percentage. He led the league 10 times in on base, while compiling 2,935 hits, 762 career home runs, the most ever, 1,996 RBI, 2,227 runs, stealing 514 bases, adding 601 doubles. The man won 7 MVP awards, 8 Gold Glove awards, 2 batting titles, and was a 14-time All-Star. This is reality number 1, when you take all the numbers, all the years into account, without any kind of adjustment. Now, by all accounts, Bonds' use of PEDs was largely spurred and motivated by the McGwire and Sosa phenomenon of 1998. After an injury-plagued 1999, Bonds came back in 2000 at the age of 35 with eye-popping numbers. This is the point at which his power numbers exploded and speed numbers trailed off. No more Gold Glove awards after the 98 season. So just for the sake of argument, and to make a bit of a point, let's just assume Barry Bonds retired at the age of 34 after the 99 season, most likely a clean player at that point. Here's what his career totals would have looked like. A .288 hitter, 2,010 hits, 445 career home runs, 460 stolen bases, with 423 doubles. He would have knocked in 1,299 RBI. He would have been a 3-time MVP and an 8-time Gold Glove Award winner, with a compiled WAR at that point of 103.7. We're talking about a first ballot Hall of Famer. If you truncated his career at age 34. even making an extreme example by completely chopping off the last 8 years of his career, guess what? Still a first ballot Hall of Famer. If you look at some of his WAR numbers, pre-PEDs, in 1990, he had a 9.7 WAR season. 1992, a 9 WAR season. 1993, a 9.9 WAR season. In 1996, a 9.7 WAR season. This is a man who averaged 9.57 WAR per season. Pre-PEDs. So we're talking about a very elite talent. Okay, so we've looked at two realities so far. One, in which he's Babe Ruth. Two, in which he's still a Hall of Famer, albeit without the compiled totals that you would expect. The third reality that I think is the most compelling is assisted by an article. Now, this was published on ESPN.com, written by Mark Feinruh-Wada and TJ Quinn. And this data is based on Dan Samborski's ZiPS projection system. In simplest terms, the system, endorsed by MLB.com, uses past performance and trends on how performance degrades with age to predict a player's future performance. So basically, they're taking data from pre-PED Bonds and projecting what a normal career would have looked like for Barry Bonds had he not enhanced after the 1999 season. So what we have here, when we look at Bonds' home run totals, you have basically, instead of being a guy who hits 762 home runs, you have a guy who hits 551. If you just followed a normal career trajectory for Bonds. The model projects that instead of hitting 73 home runs in 2001, Bonds would have hit only 23. And where he actually hit 209 home runs during the 4 seasons of 2001 through 2004, he was projected to hit just 66 during those 4 years. So we still have an elite number of 551 home runs, putting him just ahead of Mike Schmidt's career home run total. However, it falls well short of that lofty Ruthian number of 762 that he ended up with. If we look at the OPS number, which projects the player's ability to get on base and hit for power, and normalizes for the effect of various parks, Bonds ended his career with an ungodly 182 OPS plus, which puts him really in his own category. The ZiPS projection system says that he likely would have ended up closer to a 153 OPS plus, placing him tied for 30th in baseball history. If you look at probably the most interesting stat, to me anyway, is the WAR stat. And now they're going by Fangraphs WAR, not Baseball Reference WAR, which is slightly different, but only by a few points. Bonds' career WAR ended up at 164.4, according to Fangraphs, placing him in a class with Babe Ruth, Walter Johnson, and Cy Young. For his career, ZiPS projects Bonds' WAR total would be somewhere in the range of 128.7, dropping him from number 2 all-time to number 9, just ahead of Stan Musial. Looking at these three statistical realities, one extremely generous, one extremely harsh, I think the Goldilocks projection is this third one that brings us as close to the truth as we can possibly get. And as someone who saw five-tool Barry Bonds play as a kid, I think he deserves a fair shake. And here's my Barry Bonds collection, a little more modest compared to some of those monster cards that I was showing earlier from my dad's collection. However, having a super collector for a dad has benefits, and over the years, most of these cards ultimately trickled down to me from my dad. So big shout out to Dad. I love you, and the cards that came from you will always hold a special place in my collection. Okay, let's start chronologically from the beginning here. Let's start with the 86 Fleer Update, one that I consider one of Bonds' true rookie cards, coming from 1986. And I've always loved this card. It's a really nice pose. I love the color scheme on the helmet. Kind of a no-nonsense Bonds rookie card from that update set in 1986. Just awesome to see him in that early Pirates uniform. This is a PSA 9, still a very reasonable card in a 9. I'm not sure what they're going for these days, but it can't be much. It's from that high pop wax era. And I'll put the population on the right here. But aesthetically, one that I've always just really liked. And I just like the fact that it's from 1986. The first year he had Major League cards. Okay, next up, I would call this the crown jewel of my Barry Bonds collection. It's a very common card, the 1986 Topps Traded. However, the thing that makes it uncommon is the autograph. You don't see many signed copies of this card. Very, very scarce. I don't believe Barry Bonds even really signs much anymore, and I don't believe he signs rookie cards much at all, and never really has. Rare occasions. So that's the differentiator on this card. It's the PSA 10 Gem Mint autograph. Playing days, actually probably an earlier career, mid to mid-career autograph. But just the aesthetic of that card. This came from my dad a few years back. And just a real beauty. The card itself would probably grade an 8. So we just had the autograph graded. But I love that one. And then if we go to 1987, this is the Fleer. This is my favorite of all of his 1987 cards. Just love the portraits above all else. And that blue border with the fading is just gorgeous. It's a gorgeous card. Always been one of my favorites. And this is graded a 10. Of course, from that high pop wax era, there are plenty of them on the pop report. But relative to some of his other rookie cards, the pop on this one at PSA 10 is quite a bit lower than, say, his 87 Topps. But just aesthetically one that I really like. And then this is really one of my favorite on-card auto sets from the 90s. The 97 Donruss signature set. I mean, this is one of those pioneering sets where it was one autograph per pack. And this was one of the big pulls in that set. One that I probably will have graded eventually. Probably gonna have it dual graded for condition and autograph, because I think it will grade highly on both counts. And just, again, a glorious card aesthetically, which is really what I go for. Playing days and aesthetics. Let's go to the baseball next. This is a really nice playing days. Sweet spot. Steiner. Barry Bonds ball. One of his more simple autographs. Sort of the BBS era, where he was really just kind of signing BBS. But very clean. I've kind of left that protective plastic around it. It's been there probably since it was signed. But it has kept the ball quite clean, and it protects it. And this was done through Steiner back in the 90s. This is a Leonard Coleman National League ball. It's probably done mid-career for Barry Bonds. But just a really nice example of a mid-career Barry Bonds autograph. Bonds autographs have held their value quite well over the years, because he has not been a frequent signer and he doesn't have an excessive amount of autographs on the market, and he's one of the best players of all time, so that does good things for the demand. And then last but not least, I have a couple 90s refractors here, which has been a more recent emphasis for my collection. I'm trying to kind of go back and pick up some of those finest and Bowman's Best refractors that came out when I was a kid, and these fall right in that wheelhouse. A 94 Bowman's Best refractor in really nice shape. I probably will have this one graded. But just glorious card. This is the first year of Bowman's Best, and a lot of nostalgia for me. I was 12 years old when these came out. So kind of right in my wheelhouse. I mean, if anyone goes back to when they were 12 years old, think about the sets that were coming out. Those are fun times. You know, if you were in the hobby as a kid, go back to when you were 12 years old, think what were those sets that were coming out when you were 12? And I bet you have nostalgia for them. And then 95, I was 13 years old. This is the finest refractor. Another glorious card. One that I probably will have graded as well. This is back when they only had one refractor every year, not 18 different types of refractor. So these are very low population, which I think will drive demand for cards like this in the future, especially ones that grade highly. So that's something I'm focusing on. One other novelty wild card for Barry Bonds that I've picked up in the last year or so is this 1992 Topps Kids, which is a card that I love because it's kind of a caricature with foreshadowing. This came out in 92, so well before the steroid years. This was still when Bonds was on the Pirates. And it portrays him as a kind of a muscle-bound, top-heavy slugger. So it's kind of crazy that years before he would actually become that, he's pictured sort of in a caricature by the Topps company. Someone had embellished his physique in 1992, before really there was any kind of a change to Barry Bonds' physique. So it's kind of a fun foreshadowing that you see on this card. And not many people know about it. There's not many of these things graded, but you know, I probably paid $12 or $15 for this card, less than the cost of grading. And so I figured, why not? This is really fun. And so I just wanted to put this thing on people's radar. It's a little known set. I don't think it was very popular when it came out, and it certainly isn't popular now. But 92 Topps Kids, it's a really fun card. So if you're looking for a kind of a fun Barry Bonds card on a budget that has kind of some foreshadowing to what would happen later in Bonds' career, this is a fun one. But just wanted to put that one on people's radar because it's one that I really like, as more of a novelty than anything. All right, well, that is what I have for Barry Bonds. Thank you so much for joining me. This was one of the most fun videos I've done to date. Thank you to Dad for your help in acquiring many of these Barry Bonds cards over the years. It's been a lot of fun, and I can't wait till next week when I'll unveil number 15 on the countdown. Until next time, keep collecting and stay iconic.